Welcome in, ladies and jelly spoons. This is basketball by association, where we talk basketball in the association. My name is Arky. Shea, that is Joel C. Cortez. Joel, I'm starting to get what our name means now.
Yeah. Just want to wish a happy Labor Day to everyone who labors, whether that be workers or women who have had babies, I guess. You're on the list.
Lady
right?
workers who are pregnant.
You are the absolute top rung on the ladder for that.
You are the most laboriest of laborers.
Happy pre-Labor Day to you, because it's.
How do you feel about,
guess.
real quick, and then we'll move on to the program? Mm-hmm. How do you feel about this being called the official, or kind of the official, last grilling day of the season?
I can tell you what, I'm going to grill later today. I'm looking forward to it.
But the last one?
No. No.
Yeah, every day is an excuse to grill if you got the decent weather.
Yeah, I'm not one to grill when there's snow on the ground up here in the northern states, although my dad has been known to do that. But early spring, like as soon as you get a decent thaw and you're out there in March, I've grilled in March before. I've grilled when it's raining, and you just set the grill up at the edge of the garage. Like
it's going to be 90 plus degrees through Halloween in Alabama. So like I've got plenty of grilling days left. Plenty.
Yeah, I think some of those grilling rules, were made by people probably in the upper Midwest and Ohio somewhere, or upstate New York or something, where it made sense there, but not for the rest of everyone.
Yeah. So stop using it as your marketing campaign. I'm tired of it. Tired of it.
Arky Shea, this is episode 116, which means
we're moving forward. Like this.
Yeah, we're gonna move forward quick, because I know
talking about.
You're tight on time, brother, and we got a lot of cool things to talk about. We got Kevin Durant, we got Patrick Beverley, the Donovan Mitchell trade, all sorts of good stuff. Episode 116, only two players in NBA history have logged 116 NBA playoff games. One is Vinny the Microwave Johnson, who would be a great pick for this. But another one, the guy that I'm going to pick instead, is somebody that realistically, at least at the start of their career, you would never have expected them to have hit 116 career playoff games. That's because through the first 3 years of this guy's career, he played in Ireland, Argentina, the United States Basketball League, which was a thing that no one knew about, and 2 years in Portugal. But he didn't do it recently when playing overseas was like, cool and financially productive and whatever. No, he played in places like Ireland and Argentina and Portugal in the late 80s, when that wasn't really a thing yet, and then still made his way onto an NBA roster, won a couple of NBA championships, and logged 116 career playoff games. In fact, 3 NBA championships, 2 with the Houston Rockets as a shooter for Hakeem Olajuwon, and 1 with the San Antonio Spurs during the early Timmy Duncan, David Robinson days. This, Arky Shea, unless you want to take a guess?
No, who is it?
All right, this is the Mario Ellie episode. One of the guys that I had a soft spot for.
There's a name.
Yeah, one of the guys I had a soft spot for growing up as an NBA fan, because I got on board the three-point thing very early, and three-point specialists were just such a cool, subspecies in the NBA. And Ellie was a little bit more than that. He could lock down defensively, he could hit a mid-range jumper, but really, I think, made his way into the league and stayed there by being a guy who was a very reliable three-point shooter in an age where there weren't a lot of those yet, and they weren't shooting anywhere near the volume that they do today.
Well, let me ask you, your dad, was your dad an NBA fan or basketball fan?
No, I'm like the only sports fan in my immediate family. I got it from my grandfather's side.
I was trying to think, because I look, people here in North Alabama, or in Alabama in general, basically have one sport that they like.
Right.
And I'm the only one in my family that sort of like the NFL and definitely like the NBA and like baseball at all. Like, just sort of enjoyed all of it, some mostly casually, some more hardcore. Like NBA was a little more hardcore. So I was going to ask, because you were so early into it and young, I was going to see if your dad would have been, if he was a fan, would have been one of those, what is this? This is not, but I guess
I'll tell you what got me. My grandpa, from Wisconsin, born and raised in Milwaukee, diehard Packers fan, diehard Brewers fan, big Milwaukee Bucks fan, and I used to talk sports with him. But for me, I think the big change was a school field trip in 4th grade. We did a Timberwolves game against the Golden State Warriors. I remember it. It was my first NBA game, and J.R. Rider got thrown out of the game. His mom came onto the court because he wouldn't leave the court. Like this was bad. This was bad J.R. Rider days for the Wolves. And I was just hooked. It was so much fun. And a lot of my friends in my classroom at school were big NBA fans. And I think they got me hooked onto it. And right away, I was into the trading cards and the jerseys and just all of that ancillary stuff in the early and mid 90s when the league really began marketing to kids at that age. And I was right in that demographic and I was hooked.
I will. We'll go straight to the topics next.
Yeah,
I don't want to disperse my family anymore than I've already dispersed them on various podcast episodes. But my family never had either the financial wherewithal or the ability to, or the want to, sort of invest in things like my love or interest in the NBA. So never had the trading cards or the jerseys or stuff growing up. So but I always followed the sport. So I didn't get all the full, cool kid stuff. Where I could have had me like a J.R. Rider rookie car to sell at some point, or to put my bike spokes. But whichever one would have worked out back then. Yeah. But I do sort of miss some of that because I don't have boxes in my attic where I can go up and be like, oh, I remember these. Like it's a lot of just like, every now and then a Fingerhut catalog would come in, and my mom would be like, I'm gonna order something from this.
That was the thing I spent my money on. I mean, predominantly as I hit early teens and tween age, like that was what I wanted for birthday presents, or if I had a little bit of spending money.
I'm looking at what's behind you right now and on your back, and it looks like you still spin a nickel or two there as well.
It's still definitely a thing for me.
Yeah. Okay, real quick. Sorry, I don't want to. I'll give you as much time as we can now. What's the number one thing on your want list right now, NBA related?
I've got a few more jerseys to finish the bar area, the studio down.
But which one do you want the most? What's the number one what's the wish list item number one? Not that you can't get it or need to go to the intimate, but what's number one of the desired list?
I've been eyeing a Chris Webber Washington Bullets jersey.
All right.
That's the I like the obscure ones. I like the teams that were underrepresented. I like the big name players that were on those teams, maybe for a short period of time, kind of the trivia type of things. And even like as a kid, those were the jerseys I gravitated towards. Like, oh, this guy's a near all-star. This guy's a fringe all-star. And he's, on Vancouver or Miami before they were cool, or that sort of thing. And those were the jerseys I want. I didn't want a Dallas Cowboys starter jacket or a Lakers or Knicks jersey or something like that, because people had those, and I wanted something that nobody else really had.
I feel like nobody now has like a John Starks jersey, which is what I would want at this point.
Yeah. I mean,
I like that little fella, and that we get, speaking of 3-point sort of dudes, like that was like, that's the only thing he could do. Like he was 4'4". And somehow in the NBA was able to make a nice little career. But he's a dog too, man. That was he was a Chihuahua, but he was a dog. He was
he could yam a dunk on people every now and then.
Oh, he could, especially if you lifted him up a little bit. Just, thank you, Johnny. We got a good show lined up for you here on this program. We're going to talk about some of the most recent trades and not trades that have happened. Joel, let's start with the Donovan Mitchell one first, because it will lead into what I'm thinking about the Kevin Durant stuff next. So those who are NBA fans, this isn't breaking news for you, so we're just going to talk about it from our perspective, which I find most fascinating because I like Joel and my opinions better than anybody else about this. Donovan Mitchell does not go to my Knicks. He does not go to a team that matters at all. And that's just my opinion, because no other team matters besides the Knicks, by the way. That's what I'm saying. But Donovan Mitchell is no longer in Utah, and that means Utah has lost this offseason on purpose Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, and gotten a whole bunch back. Let's start with what it's been gotten back from the most recent trade with Donovan Mitchell. Joe, before we went on, I asked if you put all that up, because I remember the other day looking at all of the assets that came back, and it's kind of mind-numbing. But then we'll talk about all of those. But do you have the ones that are specifically for Donovan Mitchell?
Yeah, for Donovan Mitchell, primarily it's Colin Sexton, who the Cavs had drafted and were kind of grooming into their starting point guard until Darius Garland was able to take that job while Sexton was hurt. Lauri Markkanen gets moved for the third time in his young career already. He was, drafted and moved by the Chicago Bulls to the Timberwolves, then went from the Timberwolves to the Cavs, or to the Bulls, I should say, then to the Cavs. And now he lands in Utah, but a starting power forward and a guy with some upside who was a key part of Cleveland's 3 7-footer lineup last year. A couple of lesser players get moved, but the big thing coming out of Cleveland then is 3 first-round draft picks and a couple of pick swaps. And remember that Utah already acquired previously in the Rudy Gobert trade Malik Beasley, who may or may not be a starter, but is definitely a rotation-level player. Jared Vanderbilt, who, again, rotation level, young power forward who might be a starter for them. Walker Kessler and Leandro Balmaro, 2 prospects.
Kessler has like 6
upside.
teams before stepping on the court.
Mm-hmm. And then 4 first-round draft picks and a couple of pick swaps. So there's been more movement than that. Patrick Beverley also came over to Utah briefly. He got moved to the Lakers. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But in that Lakers trade, Talen Horton-Tucker comes over to Utah.
THT, baby.
Prior to that, Utah last year, late in the year, maybe in a preview type of move, pick up Nickeil Alexander-Walker from New Orleans, a guy that I really, really like. And as I'm looking at this backcourt and this depth chart of what Utah has here early, and we'll talk more about the Jazz when we get to like division preview time, which by the way is coming up next week already. When we get into that, but like I really like the young collection of players that Utah has assembled. But what you really, really like in classic Danny Ainge fashion, now that he's on board, is the fact that they've brought in 9 first-round draft picks, 7 depending on how you look at it, this offseason. And they're going to be able to collect those. We don't know how high they're going to be, but it's that draft capital. 23, 25, 27, and 29 from the Minnesota Timberwolves. And then coming from Cleveland.
And that's only because the NBA won't let you do back-to-back years.
Right.
That's it. That's the only reason. Like, you can't just shovel off your entire future, just half of it at a time.
25, 27, and 29 from Cleveland. So it's not an accident that those double pick years line up for Utah as well. Danny Ainge did this sort of thing in Boston when they went through some miniature rebuilds after the KG, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen era kind of ended. And we saw him build and build and build. There were some hiccups along the way. I don't know if this is what Ainge signed up for or what minority owner Dwayne Wade signed up for, like a full-scale rebuild, if they knew this was happening or possible when they came on board the Utah Jazz. But Utah has never in their franchise history been this aggressive and this assertive of like, nah, we're not going to hold on to it. We're going to move on. It was a good run, and it was a good run for that team. Run. But Quinn Snyder, decided to go, whether he was pushed out or just made that of his own accord. He's gone. And they were like, yeah, no, it's time. And then they went out and they got these draft pick hauls, and it's going to be an interesting young group. I see a lot of upside with what they got, and it's going to get real interesting over the next few years.
Yeah, I do think the biggest takeaway I have from all of this, not just the fact that Cleveland has turned into a sporty team.
Yeah, we'll talk about them in a second.
Which was a sporty team until injuries last year. It's turned into a much sportier team, provided everyone's able to return. Well, I shouldn't say everyone. Some of them are gone. But I do want to just say that this is 100% out of the Danny Ainge wheelhouse. That guy, as a Mormon, I'm not used to a Mormon lying to me and telling me, hey, I'm retiring. We're good with Celtics. And then I just want to go play some golf. And then 7 minutes later, takes the Utah job and then shoves out the head coach when things are going well, shoves out the top 2 players when they don't like each other, just says, you know what? We've gotten probably everything we can out of this particular group of people. And you know what? Good for them, and thank them for their time. But it's clear that we need something else. And we have 2 really desirable assets out here. And we have to, if we're going to do this, we have to act now. And we can get a whole bunch We can get a whole bunch. And then we can make something work for the future, and we can start to build toward the future, as well as getting some pretty good young players now, which they did. So, again, appreciate Danny Ainge lying to everybody about his golf game and going straight into, I'm going to go build another franchise mode.
Two quick things before we move to the Cleveland side. For Utah, they're not done because Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley, Bojan Bogdanovic make absolutely no sense there. Rudy Gay won't return either. But the three aforementioned guys make no sense there as part of a rebuild. They're going to be very desirable pieces for contenders, including maybe even the Lakers, who we'll talk about in a little bit. And then the other thing, if you're, shout out here to Always Sunny fans, this is a Charlie Kelly moment of connecting all the dots on a giant board. You can piece all of this collapse, this rebuild for Utah and wherever this goes, and maybe it's going to be fault if this doesn't result in a championship. Maybe it's going to be the start of something beautiful if Utah is able to turn this into a title somewhere down the line. You can pin all of this to Rudy Gobert refusing to wear his mask and wanting to cough on the microphone.
Oh, you can. Yeah, like patient zero is the epicenter of all of this. That's exactly what happened.
That's where the trust was lost with Donovan Mitchell. That's where, people will say, oh, that was the beginning of the pandemic in the NBA. It was going to happen either way. But that's where the relationship started to erode and people lost trust in Rudy Gobert, and they never got it back. And that lack of chemistry was very clear last year.
People don't realize how quickly trust can erode from a player to another player, a person, more importantly, to another person.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be a big, giant blow up to happen. And especially when you get to some of these guys who are in their, mid to late 20s, they're a younger group of guys. And I think a lot of people are expecting it's a different generation, Joel, than what we're used to, sort of being like everyone's just going to just fight through this because everyone wants a championship. And you fight through it for a title, and you fight through it for the team. It's not the same type of guys we're talking about anymore. Like they're just different, and it doesn't take much. Remember, it doesn't take much. Well, it's not the best example. Kobe and Shaq didn't like each other, but there wasn't a whole lot of reason not to like each other, and then they just kept adding on to it. Right? They just kept sort of digging each other, like in the media or in songs or whatever they would decide to do. It's like, all right. And that's a different breed of cat than what there is now. So it's completely feasible that Mr. Slap the microphones and everyone's recorders and then get COVID started in the country. It's completely feasible that the beginning of that is the beginning of the end here. I don't think I'm that interested more in sort of Utah right now.
Yeah, let's go to Cleveland.
Cleveland's a fascinating spot because, just alluded to before, Cleveland was a team that was, not borderline. They were upper echelon playing through the majority of their non-injured part of the season last year. And they were trying to hold on at the end of the year to just some kind of playoff spot. And that's what that team was resorted to because of injuries and devastating injuries to very important pieces of that team. I don't hate this Cleveland team as currently compromised right now.
No.
And I'm one of these guys that I don't think Donovan Mitchell is worth nearly as much as he got.
Agreed.
I don't think you sort of mortgage that much for someone like him. Which is why I sort of, we don't have to do a sort of Knicks-centric focus on this, which is one of the reasons I think I was okay. New York didn't give up as much when I saw what the Hall was back. I was like, ooh, okay.
A little steep.
Man, right. And it's going to lead to our Brooklyn Nets thing in a minute. But if you can make, the NBA has turned into, if you can make a run now, if you could sort of build a short-term run, 2-3 years, as opposed to building for 5, 7, 8 years, trying to build this long-term thing, the better you can concentrate your focus now. I think the happier it makes players. I think it's the happier it makes the fans. And I think it's sort of, when the way we are year to year, makes a lot of sense, despite giving up a lot of assets for them. Cleveland's made themselves a team that I could see into the Eastern semifinals.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to say something a little bit controversial here, but in order for Cleveland to get where they want to go, which is going to be deep into the playoffs and a championship somewhere in the next 5 years, because that's the window that you're looking at for most franchises, even though Garland and Mobley are young and a lot of these other guys are super young. Donovan Mitchell's only 24 or something like that.
Yeah.
Donovan Mitchell needs to be and should be their third best player. Garland and Mobley have to be the two better guys, and I think will be the two better guys. And I like Donovan Mitchell, the way he's scrapped to become an all-star. I think he's hit his ceiling as a scoring combo guard who is not bad defensively, but you're not going to get much there. But his ability to run the offense and really just to stir the pot. Donovan Mitchell is a guy who stirs the pot for you because he can create some shots. He can facilitate some shots. When he gets hot, I mean, he can go Damian Lillard level on you, just not as often as Damian Lillard does when he's on. But we saw in Utah that Mitchell was probably overcast as a true number one option.
I think that's right. I think it's
even
fair.
though he had some help, but he was the only guy that could create his own shot there. And you had a second wheel who was not a scorer in Rudy Gobert. And we saw the limits of that even in a good system and with shooters and all that. Coming to Cleveland, he's got Darius Garland, who is very similar as a pot stirrer, but is a guy that I think knocks down a mid-range J a little bit better even and will stretch the floor better over the course of his career, even though Mitchell is very proficient at that. I think they're going to be able to play off each other well. Garland has already had to share the backcourt as a combo guard with Colin Sexton previously, and then played in the same backcourt last year with Ricky Rubio before Rubio got hurt, and they made that work very well. So Garland can play on the ball, off the ball. Mitchell's going to need the ball in his hands a little bit too. Mobley's ability to continue moving away from the basket a little bit and to be able to stretch the floor even just a little bit to where you can put him and Jared Allen on the floor together and not worry so much is going to be critical. I was surprised that Cleveland gave up on Lauri Markkanen, who kind of was part of their identity as 3 7-footers on the front line, and Markkanen was the floor stretcher. And it was really unique and kind of heralded this move back to bigger lineups in the NBA. I was surprised they did it, but when they hit those injury skids, Markkanen got exposed again when he was asked to do too much. And he didn't play well during the play-in tournament for them last year. And I think they just decided that, he's a rotation player, not a building block. And I'm totally fine with that. Now, when I look at the Cavs roster, I see a legit starting 5 with a ton of upside. Garland, Mitchell, Isaac Okoro, your guy Okoro, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen are all young with a lot of growth left to go. And last year, the problem was they were very young on the bench too, with not a lot of experience. And when the injuries started to pile up, guys just weren't ready. But now the backups, Ricky Rubio is coming back, should be healthy. And if he's not, you'll have Raul Neto for a little bit, who's fine. Veteran point guard, Karis LeVert, very much overqualified to be your 6th man, but might move into the starting lineup depending on how Okoro does. Jetty Osman and Dean Wade are still in the mix at the small forward position. Kevin Love, who resurrected his career last year and now I think moves into that perfect role again as 6th or 7th man. And behind Jared Allen, you're going to have either Lamar Stevens or Robin Lopez. So you got a young guy, you got a veteran guy. They're deep. They're deep enough this year to be dangerous. I don't know if they have that top line talent that's ready to go yet, like some of the elite teams in the East do, but they've got the pieces, they've got the guys. The only thing that can come back to bite this team is if they pull an Atlanta on us where they're young. On paper, they look great, and they buy into that same hype, and they just don't have the magic that they had last year, and you get that complacency. That would be a disaster for Cleveland. I don't see that happening, though, because Donovan Mitchell has been there before, and I think Mitchell is going to be very helpful as a young veteran who has accomplished already the types of things that Cleveland needs to take, at least in their next step, which is, hey, win the division or get close to winning the division, get an upper playoff seed. Utah did that a handful of times. They didn't win many playoff rounds, but at least knot up that regular season and get where you want to go in the playoffs and start building that foundation, because it's a really exciting group in Cleveland. Like I'm going to be watching the Cavs a lot this year.
I think I'll be forced to. I was interested in the Cavs on the periphery last year. Much more so like if they played like Boston or New York or something, you know.
Yeah.
I'm from Boston and New York area, so it's a big thing for me. But I think something's there starting to. I'll tell you that the two teams over the last couple of years that I've been happiest to see be that aggressive, and I've been sort of surprised with how they've decided to do it. Joel, you can choose to disagree if you like, but it's sort of Chicago and Cleveland have been two of those teams.
I thought that's where you're going. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought two teams have been so like they started out slow, right? They sort of had a slow build. They got rid of a lot of just older contracts, older talent. And they started to infuse with some youth, made a couple of good draft picks, pick up a couple of free agent here or there that sort of helps get you along the way. And then pow, they're ready to sort of, you know, make some noise going forward. Joel, just real quick, I want to say that the Knicks, the way this happened, the fact that the Knicks said that they were done up until like the 12th hour, like they weren't going to move on a couple of thoughts, and that Utah at the final buzzer made the call to Cleveland, and they worked out something sort of, you know, within a really short amount of time, makes me wonder about the next topic we're going to talk about, which is the fact that Kevin Durant didn't go anywhere, right? Kevin Durant sort of gives this whole like, we're cool, everybody. By essentially having, was it the owner who put out a statement or the GM that put out a statement that was like, hey, Kevin Durant's coming back, y'all shut up.
I think it was GM, yeah, and then Sean Marks.
So it made me think about, you know, at the time you're like, oh, all this, you know, 4, 5, 6 weeks, nothing happened, Kevin Durant, even though he wanted it out, right? And then you sort of hear about what Donovan Mitchell, what the proposed number was going to be from someone like New York, and New York finally said no. Then you see what they got back from Cleveland. And it made me did kind of wonder, you know, if Brooklyn didn't get the number that they want or the amount of picks or whatever they want, what could they have gotten for a Kevin Durant? Because Donovan Mitchell just went for the moon, right? Like, what could Brooklyn have possibly wanted? The entire roster of somebody else, like just like not even a roster switch, just like give us your guys and we'll make something happen. Give us all of your picks, your odd number picks from now until the 2045 year. Like Donovan Mitchell, God bless him. I think he's a terrific player. I would have enjoyed seeing him on the Knicks. I think he would have been a fine piece, and the Knicks really could have made a push.
I don't like him next to Jalen Brunson. I'm just going to say that real quick. Maybe. I like Brunson and RJ Barrett together more than I like Mitchell and Brunson.
I love RJ Barrett, and I told you when it first happened that the Jalen Brunson thing was I was the price. Who cares? It's not my money. Like, but it's just interesting to see how much someone can get versus how much you think they would be able to get. But New York sort of has turned into the last 15, 20 years of we got to pay extra to sort of get some of these guys. But I don't know what would have even been close to fair, like for Brooklyn. Like if Brooklyn really wanted, like if Durant wanted out, and you say you lose you some leverage position, we knew Donovan Mitchell and Rudy. If you and I knew Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell were going to be sent away and jettisoned from Utah, the league had to know, right? Yeah. So like that, there was some leverage lost, but it turned out to be big, great hauls for Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell back. Kevin Durant, even though you do lose some of the leverage, you still have to give up stuff to get him. Like, what would Brooklyn have even considered at that point? Because we heard the rumors about wanting, Boston's first round picks, and they wanted either Marcus Smart or a Jaylen Brown
or both.
Or both. Like, right? Like,
yeah.
So like, I don't even know who would have had anything that Brooklyn would have thought fair to even consider with, now that I see a package like that come out.
When Utah got all those picks from Minnesota and Cleveland, it's a good bet that those picks are not going to be lottery picks, just because Minnesota's going to be conceivably good as long as Anthony Edwards is there. We'll see what happens with Towns. Cleveland is going to be conceivably very good during this window because their guys are young. But you're taking the dice roll because those are not bona fide contenders yet, that the wheels could fall off and those picks might be mid-round at best, but maybe you get lucky in a year, one of those seasons and they turn into lottery picks. Those were middle-of-the-road teams. The problem that happens with Durant, to answer your question, is that Durant's not going to want to go to a middling mid-market team that may or may not be a contender down the line. So to get all those picks, he's got a short list of contending teams now. Those teams that get a Kevin Durant and are already contenders don't have a lot of picks that are going to turn into lottery picks unless it's a group that's near the end of their line. And you're like, hey, don't give me picks for next year or 2 years from now. I want your picks from like 3, 4, 5 years from now, because I don't think your old guys are going to have it at that point. That would be the type of team to go after. But you have to somehow swindle them out of their future picks. Brooklyn is going to want upside guys back, very high upside guys back as they go into a rebuild. But most of those contenders don't have high upside guys. They have win now guys. Or you're going to be asking for win now guys like a Jaylen Brown, a Marcus Smart, that type of thing. But if you're Brooklyn, like, that's not good enough, because those guys coming back are not good enough to still equal Kevin Durant. It's a really tricky position. The asking list is very specific, and the type of team that actually has the ability to meet that price, so few of them. And again, like, you don't want that team to be good in 4 years, even though Durant arrives. You got to be looking at that window. And outside of, like, maybe the Golden State Warriors, if you could have swindled them out of their picks and most of their young guys and built it that way, and then you're banking on the fact that, like, Draymond and Clay and Steph and now KD are all going to hit their late 30s, their 40s at about the same time. But who knows if Durant even wanted to go back there, or if Golden State even wanted that to happen. Miami could have been another interesting team. And those are like the only two that I look at and go, there was a real shot there for Brooklyn to get what they wanted. I don't think Boston was ever going to give up picks and Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart. If you could have done picks and one of those guys, maybe. But yeah, Brooklyn's asking price was going to be high, and Utah just kind of made the price for everybody pretty high this summer. I don't think that's sustainable. I think that's a bubble, but
yeah,
it was out of control.
If you can get it right, like, I mean,
yeah.
There's no use in not asking for the moon if you can get the moon. It's just,
And I don't think what Utah got is quite as valuable as some of the national talking heads made it out to be, just because Minnesota is going to be good. Those picks are not lottery picks. Cleveland's going to be good. Those are not lottery picks, but still on paper, when you see, rotation players with upside because they're young, and a lot of rotation players with upside, and all these picks, it is very impressive. I don't think it's like all-time boneheaded hauls, that these teams gave up, which some people are trying to say. I don't believe that at all.
But what you do is you give yourself as many options to fail.
Yes.
And still be able to have success going forward, as
Perfectly
opposed.
Put.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's not just hope this one guy turns out. Like, you give yourself a ton, which is what, when Danny Ainge was negotiating in Boston, like, they went through some stinkers, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they had a bunch of dudes and a bunch of also assets to be able to go up. And Tatum sort of fell to them, right? So to be fair, even they fell one spot, there was the thought that you had to trade up to one spot to get Jason Tatum, and they didn't, and they were able to draft him. But they had a bunch of assets to be able to make a bunch of moves that they needed to, and
yeah,
here they are. All right, Joel, I got an itchy eyeball happening right now. You can't hear that if you listen to the podcast. But
you
okay,
can
let's
see it
go
if you
into
find
the
us on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe. Go to YouTube, ring the bell, see Arky Shea's itchy eye.
That's right. I'm itching at it right now. Joel, let's talk about a trade near and dear to your heart. Joel, I'll let you break this one down because it's all up your alley.
So this is a Pat Beverley to the Lakers trade, I assume we're talking about.
Yes, sir.
So great move for Los Angeles. They needed defensive help. They get a guy who is older than people realize and is going to fall off a cliff at some point defensively, but still can defend very well. We saw that last year. Still is an agitator. Still is a guy who no one likes when he's not on your team. When he's on your team, there's something oddly endearing, kind of John Starks level about it. And Patrick Beverley's going to fit nicely with what the Lakers need. What I don't understand, but I think we have yet to be revealed. Remember that Russell Westbrook isn't entirely welcome on the Lakers, but is told that he's welcome, even as we know they're actively trying to find someone, maybe even Utah at this point, by the way, because you can make the numbers work to dump Westbrook and a pick to Utah and then take one of Utah's veterans off of their hands, like Jordan Clarkson and Bojan Bogdanovic or Mike Conley. Like, you can make the numbers work with 1 out of 3 or 2 out of the 3, depending on how you want to do this. And Utah is just going to buy Russ out. But for right now, Russell Westbrook is a Laker. For right now, Patrick Beverley is a Laker. Has anyone connected those dots yet? Russell Westbrook's mortal enemy, like not just a guy he dislikes, Russell Westbrook's mortal enemy was just brought onto the team that has been telling Russ, hey, we want you here. We're cool. It'll be all right. You're a big part of what we do. Oh, by the way, the one guy that you legitimately loathe and who legitimately loathes you, who you were just snapping back and forth with like 3 months ago, reigniting this long-running feud, he's your teammate now. Do you think that Pat Bev and Russ Westbrook have sat down and broken bread and had a glass of wine together? Because I don't think so. I don't think there's even been any text back and forth.
Whoa, you don't think they fixed this?
No, and I think like Pat Bev isn't who has been a good teammate just about wherever he's gone. Like he's been a guy in the locker room that people swear by. So maybe Pat Bev was bigger than this, but I would have to imagine in Pat Bev's very calculating WWE heel mind that he goes, I don't even need to make the effort because this guy's not even going to be on the roster in a month.
Oh, I have not even put those two together. I'm under the running assumption that Russell Westbrook hates 85% of the league.
Right.
So,
hate versus mortal loathe. Like Pat Bev is on a different tier.
Do you think this is all an effort just to force Russell out?
No, I think it's a silver lining to it. I think Patrick Beverley made sense, especially at the price where Talen Horton-Tucker was one of LeBron's guys. Looks like a decent young rotation player, but Utah is a better place for a guy like Talen Horton-Tucker to continue to grow and see what you have there. LA has other young guys that were brought in, but they do need some veteran help. We talked about this last time. And Patrick Beverley fills an area of need. He's not a great three-point shooter, but he can hit a three-point shot. And he still is a very good defender. He's going to be the lead defender in the backcourt. And Anthony Davis, for now, is the lead defender up front. You hope that they can continue to maybe bring some guys in. Juan Toscano-Anderson's going to take off some of that burden from Anthony Davis. So the idea here is less that LeBron has to do, less that Anthony Davis has to do on that end of the floor. And they achieved that. And now you hear LA being linked to some of the other Utah guys who can shoot. Jordan Clarkson, Mike Conley, Bojan Bogdanovic would be a coup for them just to get a shot maker there who is a legit automatic shot maker and has been overcast at times when he's had to create shots and be one of the key cogs of the offense. But if he's able to play off of LeBron, play off Anthony Davis, and whatever Thomas Bryant, can bring to them, that would be enormously helpful for the Lakers. So I feel like they're on the right track all of a sudden. And somebody like Utah suddenly becomes available as a dumping ground, whereas OKC doesn't really seem interested at this point. They're one of the only other ones that make a ton of sense. I just don't know what I don't know what jersey Russell Westbrook is wearing next season, even though training camp is coming up real quick. And I really am concerned about what the next 3 years of his career looks like. I think it's going to get ugly.
3 more years? I don't think he has 3 more years.
I think he does, but it's on different teams, and that third year is going to be truncated. And unless he pulls a Carmelo Anthony on us or a Grant Hill, late career turn where they accepted their fate, if he continues to try to just be Russ, we're looking at an Allen Iverson level exit from the league where a guy as a former MVP had earned every right to be given those chances, and he burned every single one of those late career chances until there were none left. And it was sad because, AI was phenomenal, but what made him great, I've said this many times before, what made AI so good is also what led to his downfall. And you see so many parallels with Russell Westbrook right now. History does repeat itself in the NBA. And if you've been around long enough before, you've seen these storylines and these career arcs numerous times.
I would like to say I'd be shocked, but I'm with you. I've seen enough NBA in my life to know that it would not be the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, whatever time that something like this happened. I just
if Russell Westbrook,
I don't feel like he's the kind of guy that would want to grind like that.
Right.
Well, I don't know. Maybe you can just squeeze out a couple more $1 million a year for the final years of your contract and of your career. I get why not?
If he can remake himself, and is willing to do that,
that's asking a lot of.
I know. I'm just laying out. I'm laying out the only path forward.
Okay.
The only path forward for Russell is that once this big contract is done and this number is off of his reputation, because that's what's holding back. There is production there. There is some solid basketball that's played at times, but that huge number clouds all of that. Once he gets past that, if he can remake himself into a 6-man scoring combo guard who can come in and run your point, and with certain other backcourt members who are floor stretchers, there is a path forward for Russell Westbrook to prolong his career, probably even far longer than just 3 years. But he's going to need to take that Jason Kidd approach where all of a sudden a guy who never had a jumper, that's the one thing he works on and works on only, and gets to that passable level. And he does not rest on his laurels or who Russell Westbrook was or what Russell Westbrook is owed because of all that. It won't matter. But if you can come in and be that helpful rotation level guy who is a spark plug with that enormous amount of energy that he plays with, that high basketball IQ that is there, just not when it comes to shot selection. He is a smart player and he is a very, very good passer. There is a lot of great things to build on with Russell Westbrook, but he is his own worst enemy because he only wants to double down on the stuff that he's not good at.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. That's where I would counter with it, as we've seen other players be flexible about this and about the end of their career, but those have also, I guess you could argue Jason Kidd didn't seem like that guy either before going into the end of his career. Russell Westbrook seems like even less of that guy that would take that kind of advice and it seems like what he wants to do, what he's going to do, he is going to grind and do. And a lot of the times it's the stuff that you're like, wow, that's working out 28% of the time for you. So why are we doing this? But he keeps doing it because he thinks he could do it, or he believes that that's the best case for him in his career at this point, or what he believes is best for the team. But
and Russ will very icily clap back that it's 28.7% of the time, actually. And he should be allowed to do that because he's a former MVP. You know, like you can see, like you said, you can see players kind of from a mile away about who they're probably going to be late in their career. And every once in a while, guys do surprise us. It is true. And that's what we're hoping here for Russ. I do have the feeling, based on what we've seen and the fact that he is in LA now, he's got that boatload of money. He's got so many off-court interests as well, kind of like a Kyrie Irving, where rather than grind and do all of the humbling stuff that is going to be required to remake himself and to do those last years. I mean, I don't question for a second that Russ loves basketball. I don't question that at all.
No, I don't either.
But he's got all these other opportunities that are going to be a little shinier and not be a kick in the ego. And I could see when this contract being up, if he's, you know, maybe he's given one more opportunity. When that flames out, he just says, screw you, NBA, I'm going home. Takes that money that he's got. Hopefully he's kicked enough of that away into his business ventures and goes and, you know, he might be a very, very, very successful businessman when the time is, you know, when it's all said and done, because he's got a lot of irons in the fire and a lot of stuff that, you know, even from that fashion side that reportedly he is very, very good at and very, very interested in, and take those talents elsewhere. It just may not be in the league.
Joe, we're going to wrap it up with you guessing how much career earnings Russell Westbrook has made through 14 seasons.
See, I mean, I'm going to say 380 million.
Wow. Okay. You went high on a 288.
288. Okay.
288. Well, I mean, it's a little disturbing because we're knowing him having the back end of these $44-45 million years.
Right.
You're like, ooh, what? But 288. So let's say he kept 10% of that. He still would be all right if he, you know. Hey, listen, he's earned the right to be able to do whatever he do. It's just, you know, you got to find. I was about to say any other team but the Lakers that would do it, but I feel like there's like 4 teams maybe that would be like willing to take him on for even cheaper. But I don't know.
Somebody will take a flyer on the hope that he can remake himself and that it'll work out well.
But you can't go for 44. You can go for 32. No, I'm joking. It would need to be much, much, much less.
Honestly, at this point, Russ, and it's going to be an absolute slap in the face, Russ, going forward after this contract is done, is a mid-level exception guy.
He is. He is. And that may be where he gets to where he says, okay, I'm done, because I'm not mid-level exception money. So, and that will be his prerogative. But he would also have an insanely charismatic career to be able to talk about, an insanely profitable one, and one that was really, really, really good on the court for the vast majority of it. That just the tail end, he's found himself in a situation where it doesn't click quite the way the rest of his career does, and right now he's just sort of a numbers guy.
Absolutely. I mean, we bash Russ a little bit, but you and I are both Russell Westbrook fans at the end of the day, and we've said that many times before. So, like, share, subscribe, find us on YouTube for the video version of the show. If you want the audio only version, Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, that's where you get basketball by association. Arky, Shea, we are on the doorstep of the new season, which means coming up over the next few shows, we're going to be breaking down the different divisions and looking at the roster moves that were made and making our predictions for how things are going to shake out, because, brother, it's here already. It might be the last grilling day, but NBA basketball is just around the corner.
I can't believe we're already back to me predicting the Knicks to win the Atlantic again. I mean, it's just been so long since I've done it. But here we go. Ready to do it one more time. Ready to have my heart broken one more time, brother.
Like clockwork.
All right, see you guys.